I am really excited that you all can be here today. I am so excited to learn about artificial intelligence and how it's changing fundraising right along with you all. Just a couple little housekeeping things. I've gotten a couple of questions about this. We are recording this webinar, and I am going to send you a link to the recording tomorrow morning. So you'll get a link to the recording, you'll get a link to the slides, and you'll also get some additional resources around building recurring donor bases and how to engage those donors. So keep an eye out on your inbox. If everything goes according to plan, that will go out tomorrow around 11 a.m. And then if you are a Twitter user, we are going to be live tweeting the highlights of this session. So go over to Twitter and use the hashtag QGiveWebinar if you would like to keep an eye on the highlights. And please feel free to add your own. If you're not familiar with me or with QGive, my name is Abby. I'm part of the team over at QGive. We're an online fundraising platform, and we're really passionate about helping nonprofit fundraisers raise more money and do their jobs more efficiently with technology. And that's why I'm super excited about the guys you're going to hear from today. And because we are so passionate about nonprofit technology, I do want to share that KIT is leading the development of something called the Certified Data-Driven Fundraiser Program. That is a CFRE accredited program. It's specifically for fundraisers who want to be more data-driven in their day-to-day fundraising. QGive is sponsoring this program alongside KIT, and we are thrilled to announce that all of our QGive customers are going to be able to get free access to the entire program. So that launches in Q2 of this year, so it's coming right up. If you are interested in participating in this free program or getting some more information about it, there is an opportunity at the end of the session to get some more information about it. So at the end of the session, you're going to get a survey that'll pop up, and at the bottom of the survey, you can tell me that you're interested in getting more information from KIT. I'll pass that along to them, and they will share information about that program. That all being said, I'm going to turn things over to Peter and Najid, and we're going to learn some really cool stuff about how artificial intelligence is shaping the fundraising world.
Okay, thank you so much, Abby. We're excited. So I'm going to hit share my screen. I'm basically a professional screen sharer at this point. And Najid, you can take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon, good morning. It's good morning on the West Coast, but I am thankfully caffeinated and ready to go. So toddler and all. It's a distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar today. In our brief time together, we're going to be talking about what I think is an incredibly exciting topic, and one that I believe is going to truly change fundraising forever: artificial intelligence. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Abby and the entire QGive team for putting this all together. Y'all did a fantastic job, and we're super grateful for your continued leadership in this space. More important than Abby, though, I'd like to thank each and every one of you. Because you're taking the time out of your busy schedules to learn, to grow, to push your minds, to explore new avenues. And this is commendable and really exciting. I also am going to put a plug for that CDDF. Thankfully, the certification program, which will be on demand and free to all the QGive customers, is taught by instructors, best-in-class folks from around the world who make data part of their fundraising work every single day. And I'm so excited we've had an opportunity to partner with folks like QGive and incredible CRMs and data providers to bring this together. And it's been a dream of mine to create data literacy in the sector. And we're doing that through software, but education is equally, if not more important. I guess I should introduce myself. For those of you who weren't here for the first few minutes, my name is Najid Kassam. I'm a father, a new father. My son is almost 2. I'm a husband, and I'm a recovering corporate lawyer. Much more relevantly, though, I've spent my life in and around the nonprofit sector, having spent 30 plus years working as a volunteer, a fundraiser, a national executive director, and now a board member or boards member. I seem to get looped into more and more work these days. I'm also really proud to serve as the CEO and co-founder of Fundraising KIT, or KIT for short. Here today with me is our wonderful head of sales, Peter Gray.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I don't exactly share all of Najid's fantastic accolades there. Let's be real, not a lawyer, not a founder, not a CEO, definitely not. Basically, I click share screen and Najid still gives me a paycheck. But one reason that I am qualified to speak on behalf of this topic today is that, I've had the kind of unique pleasure of speaking really in depth with hundreds of fundraisers over the past 5 or so years to kind of understand what some of the common challenges that they face around data. And believe me, there are some really typical common challenges and the solutions that actually work. So that's why I'm excited to chat today. And kind of when I'm not connecting with professional fundraisers, I'm a big skier. I like to spend a lot of my time up in the coast mountains of British Columbia. And in the summer months, I'm a mountain biker. So you can find me on Vancouver's North Shore. So let's dive into things. So again, I mentioned we're super pumped about this. We're excited about the partnership with QGive. We're excited about connecting and sharing more about KIT. So in terms of today, the key takeaways that we're really hoping everyone is going to understand by the end of today's webinar. First, we're going to start with a bit of an introduction to KIT, like how we came to be, kind of what we stand for, what the heck is this KIT thing all about. We're going to talk a bit about how we empower fundraisers, how you can use this software to make better data-driven decisions and ultimately raise more money. We're also going to talk about AI systems in general. So we want everyone to have a better understanding of how AI-powered systems work. And then we're going to talk specifically, and this is where I think being a QGive customer really is quite relevant, how AI can boost your recurring giving program. So specifically talking about using it to, find more and acquire more and retain more monthly recurring donors. So those are really the key takeaways here today. We're also super excited to announce at the end of today's webinar, just to thank everyone for attending, we're going to be giving away a free year's subscription to KIT. So to be eligible for that giveaway, as long as you're using Salesforce, Nonprofit Success Pack, Razor's Edge, NXT, or Neon CRM, and you submit an entry, you're eligible for that giveaway. Those are the systems that we integrate with currently. So for your chance to win, all you've got to do is actually enter through the link that's being put in the chat right now. So I think Steven's just popping that in right now. So pop into that link if you want to put in your info to be entered to win that prize draw. It's a roughly $5,000 value, and that includes the full package. So that's all of our predictions, premium support, help with onboarding. You'll go through the standard process that we would with any paying client. We even go so far as to help folks work on things like strategy around the AI itself. So if you're interested, if you want to test out KIT, in a pretty risk-free manner, there's a chance to win for free. So definitely recommend popping in there, and we'll put the link again at the end of the webinar, but you've got like a half minute right now if you want to enter your info into that draw right now. Awesome. And we also encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat box throughout the presentation. We're going to do questions at the end of the webinar. We'll have a designated question period, but if something pops up halfway through, just throw it in the chat right away so you don't sort of forget or that doesn't fade away. And we'll get to that at the end of the webinar. So with all of that kind of housekeeping on both sides done, we can jump into the wonderful world of data-driven fundraising. And Najid, you can be our captain there.
I was on mute. It had to happen once during the webinar. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Pete. Look, if anything, if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's that the world is changing, often out of our control, often in ways we don't particularly love, but change is happening and increasingly quickly. And the reality is that circumstances of our donors are also changing. Traditional giving patterns are on the move. And this is augmented, stimulated, especially by the fact that we're in the midst of the largest transfer of wealth in human history. Over the next 30 years, $30 trillion is going to be passed down from previous generations. And as baby boomers age out and pass on, a large part of their wealth is going to their children, many of whom are 20, 30, 40, and 50 right now. These are your current and future donors. But beyond just that change, new technology is exploding at a dizzying rate. 15, maybe even less than 15 years ago, actually, most nonprofits were just getting their first donation pages online. And that was a big step for a lot of organizations. Looking back, you probably can't imagine operating without those pages now. But change isn't stopping with pages. We are at the tail end of what's called the computational revolution, the revolution that put basically a computer in everyone's pocket. And we're now in the beginning of the AI revolution. And you're probably thinking to yourself, what the heck is that? Well, on a daily basis, algorithms and artificial intelligence are informing our choices. From what we see on social media, to the driving directions we get from our smartphones, to the shows we're suggested on Netflix. AI is a part of our life, whether we like it or not. And trust me, my wife would rather not. And I have a, I live with that every day. But for nonprofits, if we don't adopt the power and incredible potential of artificial intelligence, our organizations, the ones that you all work at, the ones that I sit on the boards of, are going to be left behind, or at least fundraising with a disadvantage. What do you think happened to nonprofits that resisted the internet? Some of them eventually gave in and had to scramble to build an online presence, or they stayed stubborn and we never really heard from them again. Which brings us to our topic today. We are here to help you understand some of these concepts a little bit better. When you leave today, we hope to have demystified terms like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other jargon your board members should be badgering you about. But let's get a little personal and talk about history for a second. All of this AI journey, all of this work in the sector started years ago when I built a company called Kila. I'm sure most of you have heard of Kila. It's an incredible CRM tool built for small to medium-sized nonprofits. And I started the organization while I was in law school. I was actually sitting on the board of directors of an org called Conversations for Change, which had been born out of a documentary I produced on youth social change makers in Canada. And the organization actually helped build social studies curriculum for the Toronto School Board. And I was the young guy on the board, and I was tasked with the tool to find software to help us grow and scale. And I looked and I looked and I was unhappy and I was unhappy. So, when I couldn't find what I was looking for, I said those words that every entrepreneur says, those dangerous words. I could build that. Now, set the stage here. I'm just about to graduate from law school. I have a ton of debt, and I start a project. Well, it's from here that journey began, as a side off the side of my desk, through the years I was practicing law, and it led to a technology that, in Kila is used by, I think, 10,000 nonprofit professionals across North America to manage their day-to-day donor management, their CRM, and their fundraising. Kila changed the trajectory of my life completely. Since I left the practice of law, I have spent almost every waking hour outside of my primary duties as a husband and a father to build powerful, accessible tools that empower nonprofits. Somewhere along the way, in about 2019, we realized that our clients weren't doing enough or really anything with their data. While a select few understood the power of their data, almost none were leveraging this data to its fullest potential. Thousands of organizations were tracking donor behavior without realizing it. It struck me one day that by using machine learning and artificial intelligence, we could understand the patterns and trends in donor behavior, unlocking previously unimaginable donor generosity. The thought actually came to me in the shower. I get made fun of a lot by my team and my wife, but it was actually in the shower, and I actually honestly have a clipboard in my shower. It's one of those little scuba diving clipboards, which my wife never ceases to stop mocking me about. But My shower thought was this: nonprofits should have access to the same level of technology and data that the corporate world does. If Netflix can understand what shows you're most likely to enjoy, fundraisers should be able to understand how their donors are likely to behave, who is likely to give, how much, when, and even why a donor gives. 2019 bled into 2020, and 2020 was the beginning of KIT as we know it now. Today, we see the future of fundraising as one where organizations can truly understand their donors at both the micro and macro levels. We can use both data and artificial intelligence to empower every fundraiser to unlock giving, and ultimately, we can all raise more money to support the amazing work our organizations do in all of our communities. So, without any further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Peter to actually show you what I mean by predicting donor behavior and empowering AI for fundraising. Pete?
And I'm on mute. All right, you'd think after 2 years of working from home, we might figure this out, but no. I guess I've got, almost 30 years of not having to mute myself ingrained in the brain. So let's see if I can live up to the hype of the screen share that I promised earlier today. And let's actually jump right into KIT's platform. So we're going to go through a few different use cases, and then we're going to dive into a few more slides and explain, like, how do we actually come up with these predictions? So I've jumped into KIT's platform here, and this is a predictive analytics platform. So that means it uses both. I know there was a question around, does it use AI and machine learning? Machine learning is really just a subset of AI. Some of our algorithms are more AI based, others are more machine learning based, but ultimately think of those as umbrella terms for today. This is a predictive analytics platform that uses some complex algorithms on the back end that you don't need to worry too much about to come up with a prediction on whether a donor is likely or unlikely to behave in a certain way. So basically, we take all the data in your current CRM. So let's say I've got, whether you have 8,000 or 800,000 contacts, and maybe that's Razor's Edge, maybe that's Salesforce, maybe that's Neon CRM. We heard a few other folks in the chat, some on Donor Perfect, some on eTapestry. Feel free to share those either publicly or privately to us. We do have a list of future integrations, and we're going to keep building those out. So we combine all that CRM data with a bunch of external data sets as well. So things like census data, things like wealth screening data. You can see we've got some census data on there, donor search, wealth engine, windfall, as well as a few benchmark studies, and even things like social media and email marketing, in any interaction data that you have. We combine all of that, into this big melting pot. And we're able to come up with a prediction on, whether a donor is likely to give in January, likely to give a certain amount, when, how, why. There are a lot of specific questions that we can answer with a much higher degree of accuracy than, just the status quo. So let's look at a couple predictions here. We can start with something pretty simple. This is a favorite of a lot of folks, something like Smart Ask. So Smart Ask is trying to answer the question, what is the optimal ask amount for this individual donor that is going to yield the most amount of revenue on, a given interaction or campaign? So if we were to ask 1,000 donors these specific Smart Ask amounts, KIT is expecting a much higher return on investment than, if you just sort of did your standard or status quo ask arrays. This has application around things like direct mail, email, even on donation pages it can be used in some cases. So another prediction that folks often talk a lot about is something like time of year. So time of year takes all of that donor's previous giving history, and it makes a prediction on what month out of the year is an individual most likely to give, right? You may have some donors who give seasonally, end of years, of course, we just finished that big season. Some folks might give around an anniversary. Others might give because of a certain campaign that you do that they're quite connected to. What KIT does is it finds those patterns in those individual donors. And you can even look at time of year. It says Michael's most likely to give in March. However, June and December are also common months amongst similar donors. Now, another prediction that I would say people are most excited about, and this is one that we'll be focusing on a lot today, is what we call the likelihood to recur, or in this case, likelihood to recur score. So this assigns a score from 1 to 100 on how likely an individual is to convert to your monthly giving program. Now, you can rank, you can sort, you can filter. Let's say I wanted to rank from most likely to least likely, or least to most likely on who these contacts actually are. These are folks that are not currently in your monthly giving program at the moment, but they have a very high chance of saying yes if you were to ask them. Now, again, whether you have 8 or 800,000 contacts, there are people sitting in your database right now that at one point or another have considered making a monthly gift, but whether it was timing or messaging or any type of engagement, they just haven't pulled the trigger and they just haven't committed yet. So KIT uses AI to identify those folks. From there, we can talk about how we take action on that. So most of you probably know, but monthly giving is one of the most sustainable and the fastest growing segments in individual giving. Thanks to platforms like QGive, in the last, say, kind of 10 and 5 years, monthly giving programs have gotten a lot easier to administrate, right? In 2001, a monthly giving, I don't know if anyone on the chat here has dealt with a monthly giving program back then, but you were probably dealing with checks and all kinds of weird admin, and if it's clean and consistent, sure. But think to the last 5 years, every single one of your donation pages probably has that monthly opt-in. Credit card processors, things like Stripe and other platforms have made it really easy for folks to check that box and have a monthly gift taken off their credit card every single month. So in about the past 5 years, we've seen double-digit increases across the entire sector, across North America specifically, in monthly giving total revenue. So from 2017, so that's a 10% increase minimum every single year in the last 5 years. In 2017 to 2018, it was an even bigger jump, and I'm actually not exactly sure why that might be. Maybe related to credit card or the tech platform side, or just charities responding to monthly giving programs. But there was a 40% jump between 2017 and 2018 for those monthly gifts. And you can do the math yourself, right? If you have just one donor giving $80 a month, that's great. But if you have 500 donors giving $80 a month, that's $500,000 a year. That's $500,000. If you have 1,000 monthly donors at $80 a month, that's $1 million of annual recurring revenue, assuming no drop off there, of course. So you probably all know how important monthly giving is. That's probably why you're on this webinar. That's probably why you use a platform like QGive in the first place. So let's talk about how we can use AI to identify those contacts and actually get you a few more monthly donors. So first, start by connecting KIT to your existing CRM, and that's going to assign every single contact in your database a likelihood to recur score. You can then go ahead and maybe filter this out and say, look for the top maybe 10% or 20%. Ultimately, we're looking for a list size that we can manage and action. So let's say likelihood to recur score is between, and don't worry, I've already done this, but I'll say between 17 and 100. So these are contacts that are slightly more likely than average to commit to a monthly gift. And I'm looking for about 10% of my total database. And I've got about 800 there. So that was the score range that works for me. But you can kind of narrow that down, sort and filter until it makes sense. Now, you might want to exclude some folks as well. You might want to say, don't give me major donors. Don't give me people in other portfolios. Don't give me people in certain campaigns. So you can exclude until the cows come home. You could say major gift amount is, not this, or is any of these conditions. You can suppress any folks that you want out of that. Really, really easy to do that. But I'll filter this out again. Then, if your list size is, say, less than 1,000 contacts and you have phone numbers, call these people. This is one of the most effective ways to convert folks into a monthly giving program, is connecting with them on the phone. If you don't have phone numbers, or you don't have the capacity, or that's just not an option for you, then you could use something like Best Way to Reach Out to create either an email or a direct mail campaign for these folks. With some systems, if you're on Salesforce, you could even set up rules in your Salesforce system. So if you folks have set up like a welcome series, if someone's score is, say, above 20 for likelihood to recur, that just means these folks are very, very similar to all your other monthly donors. You could set up a rule where they actually receive a specific welcome series that talks about the value of your monthly giving program, why it's so important to your mission, and why typically $1 towards the monthly giving program goes a lot further than, just say sporadic gifts annually or every couple years. Less to overhead. I mean, let's not get into that debate today. And explaining why the monthly giving program is so important and what value the donor is going to get out of that. Maybe that's something special that you can offer them. Maybe it's, even just providing them as part of a membership or a club or a giving circle. You folks are experts at branding that, but explain why it's so great for them, and continue to market specifically to those folks who are most likely to convert, rather than that, spray and pray approach that has been done in the past. Let's be honest. Everyone here's probably sent an email to a giant segment without really knowing exactly who's in it. And so from there, once we've actually identified the donors who are most likely to give, maybe we've set up some rules, we've done a campaign, or we've done some calling or emailing, then we can actually go ahead and do some measuring. And we're going to be looking at 3 metrics specifically. So the first thing that we want to know is, what is the average gift size of this campaign? And average gift size is not the only important metric here, but it is one. So what is the average gift size that your monthly recurring donors are giving? Is it $20 a month? Is it $50 a month? Is it 80 or even $100 a month? That would be on the higher end. What's the average gift size of these donors? Then we want to look at the average retention rate for these monthly donors. And a lot of folks will say, well, I can't measure that until years out. And KIT can actually measure rolling donor retention rate pretty much immediately. So you might look at, what is the retention rate rolling for these monthly recurring donors? So how much are they giving and how much are they canceling? From there, you're going to measure a third thing, which is the cost of acquisition. This is something that we can't measure in KIT. We don't know, what you pay your fundraiser salaries, but let's say you have 3 people working on this campaign, or 2 people working on this campaign, and it costs you maybe, I don't know, I'll throw out a random number. Maybe it's $5,000 a month in total overall costs for that person's time, and all the resources behind that as well. And you've got 2 full-time staff. So maybe it cost you $10,000 to run that campaign and acquire those donors. So the total cost of acquisition, and we're going to divide that by how many monthly donors did we actually get. And that's going to give us our acquisition cost per donor. Now what you're going to do is actually look at the donor lifetime value. So lifetime value is a function of retention rate and average gift size for the most part, and a few other factors thrown in there. So if the donor lifetime value of your monthly donors is significantly higher than the cost to acquire, well, great news, you're in the green. You should aim for at least double in terms of that ratio. You know, if it let's say you cost you $10,000 to run this campaign in staff time, staff salary, and all the resources, and you acquire 10 new monthly donors. That would be a cost of acquisition of $1,000 per donor. If your donor lifetime value for those monthly recurring donors is less than $1,000, well, then unfortunately, you just spent a lot of money that is not going to be returned to the mission. So that's why it's so critical to measure these things. And using AI, you can identify the folks that are most likely to convert so that your resources aren't going to donors that are going to cancel or, you know, going to lapse or going to give you small gift sizes that won't create a positive, sustainable campaign. So that's sort of the I don't know if I should call it the holy trinity there, but it's a triangle of metrics that's really important when it comes to a monthly giving program. And some of you might be kind of nodding your head like, yeah, of course. Yeah, so exactly. I'm seeing a lot of folks in the chat. Retention rate, lifetime value, and average gift size, that's going to give you the ratio of whether your campaign is truly successful or not. And if we go on to even an individual contact, KIT's going to make a prediction on the lifetime value, even on an individual level as well. So I can look at Eberhard here. These are all these are fake generated names. Gotta love if there's any Eberhards out there. I'm sorry. I can even see, what is Eberhard's donor score here with a max lifetime value predicted at $10,500. Now, for an annual recurring gift of, say, $80, or sorry, a monthly recurring gift of about $80, you're looking at $1,000 a year. If they stick with you for 5 years, and depending on what your average retention rate is there, if it's about 90 or 95% or above, which is quite a lot higher than average, you're looking at $5,000 to $10,000 in lifetime value. But what KIT does is it helps you understand and actually measure that info. Now, kind of quickly to recap, let's use likelihood to recur to identify those donors. Let's use things like smart ask, time of year, and best way to reach out to engage with, communicate, and advertise that monthly giving program. And I'm going to say it again, call those people if you can. Whoever you have phone numbers for, call them. That is the best way to convert someone to a monthly donor. From there, you're going to measure that triangle of metrics: retention rate, average gift size, donor lifetime value, and that's going to tell you that ratio. And from there, now you're on the same page as the large hospital foundations. Now you're on the same page as large national and international charities. A lot of the time we might think this type of work is out of reach. We don't have the capacity to do it, but I'm showing you a tool here today that will allow you to do all of that, effectively right away. And shout out to anyone who is a large children's hospital or large national or international charity. And if you're already doing this, awesome work. This is really how you build a sustainable, long-term, individual fundraising program, by identifying those contacts. Now, we've really only talked about, the monthly recurring donors. That's the only thing I'm going to go into in depth on this webinar. But I did want to jump into how we actually come up with these predictions. This is one of the biggest questions that we get. Great, you've shown me this cool score. How does KIT actually come up with this? So I want to preface this by saying this part can feel a little bit complex, and you don't necessarily have to understand every single bit of it, just like you probably don't know, I certainly don't know, how to build a computer from scratch, but, we're all pretty good at using them these days. We've all made it onto the webinar. But it is really cool to kind of understand at least, the zeros and ones or how something like binary maybe works. So I'll get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty side of things, and then we'll jump right into questions. So I'm going to work backwards from this thing that we call feature importance. Feature importance is something we use for a lot of our predictions, and it's a machine learning concept or method where we use the machine KIT, we use our algorithms to comb through all the data that you have. And it can be messy data, it can be a little bit jumbled, and we can find these patterns. Maybe we find that average amount makes someone very likely to become a major donor. Maybe we find that credit card payments, those people, there's a higher percentage of them that become monthly donors. And so for every given prediction, KIT and the machine is able to identify feature importance. From there, we weight and rank them to say what factors, what variables are actually most important to make someone likely or unlikely to behave in the way that we're desiring, right? What factors, what features make someone likely to become a monthly donor or unlikely to become a monthly donor? And a lot of the time, the way like traditional models have been done, or how you've segmented your database in the past when you're going out to do a campaign like this, you probably nailed it on like the first 3 or 4 factors. You probably guessed, and you can sort of segment, right? If someone gives a gift of like $1,000 for their first ever gift, you're probably going to put them in the major gift sort of prospect list, right? What you miss are the 64 other factors that are not so obvious. The neighborhood that they may live in, the amount of emails that they've been opening or not opening, the typical age of someone that lives where they live, their overall giving capacity, even things like the average gift size for someone similar to them. So KIT kind of forces all that data into a bit of a jambalaya stew, and that's how we come up with feature importance. From there, that gets packaged into this nice little score that you can then use to inform your strategy. So you don't exactly need to know how feature importance works, but what you do need to know is that for every organization, it's different. Your unique demographics, your unique campaigns and seasonality are all actually going to affect feature importance differently. That's one of the machine learning aspects of KIT. We're not just throwing a model, a one-size-fits-all model at all organizations and hoping that it works. KIT actually finds out that feature importance based on all of your data. From there, you take the score, and we'll help you on things like strategy on how to actually use that, whether there are certain rules you should implement in your CRM, whether there are certain segments that you should contact or shouldn't contact, and how best to communicate with them. So I hope I didn't, make a jumble out of anyone's brain there. I know this machine learning side of things, some people, I don't know, it glossed right over my eyes the first couple times that I went through this, but that's really everything that we wanted to show you in a nutshell today. I'd love to really kind of open up the floor. I'd love to remind folks that, today or right now is going to be the last opportunity for the webinar giveaway. So I know there were some folks that mentioned that they're not using a CRM that's compatible. I know that is unfortunate, but we won't be able to give it away if you're not on a compatible system. So for folks that are using Salesforce Nonprofit Success Pack, Razor's Edge NXT, or Neon CRM, go ahead and enter to win in the chat right there. If you're not using one of those, we're still more than happy to chat with you, and we would love to know which CRMs folks are using. We have a pretty detailed list that we track of basically requests from other systems, and that informs our future development of integrations going forward. So Stephen, I know, just popped that webinar item in the chat there, and I know we have a ton of questions, comments, etc. So I think now is really the time to open up the floor and go through some of these questions. So let's kind of start firing away. There's lots in the chat there.
Yeah, we've gotten some really good ones. One that popped up a couple of times is, can people use KIT for donor prospecting as well?
Yeah, really good question. So a lot of our predictions do rely on past data. So if you just entered a name and an email, and say if you had a physical address, there are a few things that would populate. Like, let's go on to Michael Jordan here. Some of the data enhancements would populate. Things like demographic data are going to populate based on address, or we've also got home values in there. That's going to populate. However, I wouldn't describe KIT as a purely prospecting tool. It's really designed to take the existing historical data you have to predict future behavior. So the best use cases and the most effective clients are going to have, say, one donation already on that contact profile. So think about, let's say you have 20,000 donor records. KIT can tell you what those donors are likely to do in the future. So I wouldn't stake, acquiring a whole new list of donors on this. If you're looking to say,
well, what about social listening, Pete? You could do it to that. There's opportunities, at least a little.
That's true. That's true. So certainly, like, there are some prospecting uses, but I just want to stress, if all you have is a name of, I don't know, Bill Gates money manager, that's not really the use case that we're looking for at KIT. It's helping to predict which of your existing donors is going to do what in the future. We probably don't have time to open up all of social listening here today, but that's a really great point, Najid, for folks that maybe haven't engaged, but maybe are on your email list or are in your CRM. This is one way that we can actually see who's chatting about you on Twitter, on Facebook, etc. So we can go into that a little further. If someone's curious to maybe get a quick demo on this.
Just to add to that, Pete, we also integrate with a bunch of wealth screening tools that help with prospecting. And we do things like, if you go to the home screen, for example, we have a news feed that tracks changes in key wealth indicators like home value and this when you use it, and it'll send you notifications on the news feed about, if someone buys a boat, or there are wealth screening usage, but I think Peter's very, very correct in saying it is part of a data platform, which is why we have it, but it's also not the only thing or the core thing we do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, great question though.
And I know that kind of like internal prospecting, like mining the existing donors that you have to see who can be upgraded or cultivated or have those relationships built upon, is really valuable. And actually, your comment about the fact that this is a really powerful tool, especially for engaging donors who are already engaging with your nonprofit. Someone asked, how much data or how many interactions do you need to build?
Great question.
Some of these? They said that they're in year one, so some of their donors have only given once. How much data do you need to start making these predictions?
Yeah, really amazing question. We get this all the time, and here's what we see a majority of the time with our clients. So we typically say that a couple thousand contacts is probably where you should start out using, a machine learning or AI based tool. I want to be clear, if you had 300 donors, yes, we can still create predictions on pretty much all of them. Like, pretty much every prediction is probably going to populate. If we don't have enough data, in some cases it won't populate. You can see there on a few of these, we don't have a donor score. However, for the most practical use, and for the clients, we aim for like a 10 times return on investment for our clients. We want to see them make their money
In
back
year
quite
one.
yeah, exactly. In year one, we want to see
Yeah.
them make their money back quite a bit. And so if you have 500 donors and we run this, likelihood to recur score, we may just not get almost enough results. And so that's where I say, if you only have 14 names of donors that might become a monthly recurring donor, maybe focus on acquisition efforts beyond that. We want to be, we want to make you aware of that. If you have a couple thousand donors, and let's say you only have one donation on them, that's totally fine. I like to think of KIT almost as like a sorting hat for your donors. One of the biggest challenges that fundraisers have is when a new contact comes into your database, which part of the donor pipeline or which where do they start in moves management sometimes? Is the best thing for this donor to push them towards the monthly giving program? Or should we be talking about having our major gift officers connect with them on a meeting? Or should we just ignore them altogether because they only gave $20 one December because their friend told them to, and they're never going to give again? And we should honestly stop wasting resources on them. I know it sounds harsh, but it's a reality. So I like to think of KIT as sort of a sorting hat. If you've got a couple thousand contacts, and even if you only have a little bit of data on them, that's totally fine. We work with organizations that, collect the typical data points that you have for whether it's online giving, offline giving, or any other gifts, and that's first name, last name, email, probably physical address, donation date, donation amount, payment method, all that good stuff that QGive is collecting, and it's collecting it nice and clean too, that goes into your CRM. That's the data that we tend to work with. And there are a lot of patterns that you can see within that. Even things like the dates between two donation tells us a lot about that donor's behavior. The time of day they gave, the date of the week they gave, the payment method they give. We start to find patterns in some of that data. So if you're
Pete, if I can just add one thing.
Yeah, please. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm only saying it because somebody asked the question and I typed a response. So we actually run 3 models on every single person, every prediction. We run a data model with all your data, especially if you've got things like interactions. We run one with just transaction data. We run one based more on things like demographics and aggregated data sets and census data. And I would argue that if you had to think of them really simply, it's like the first one is the best, the second one is the second best, the third one is the third best, right? And we're actually going to show you, well, we're not doing anything, the software is doing it, but it's going to show you the prediction that we're most confident in, but for both precision and accuracy. So, if we're not confident in a prediction, we probably won't make it. If we are, based on aggregated sets or other things, even if folks haven't made a donation, we can, like Pete said, generate some of that, but it's not going to be quite as good as, if you really have rich data. But it also can be we're cooking up some really cool functionality to inspire you and tell you where you can get more data and how you can get more data, connecting your email marketing tools, do this. So we're going to work with you, or we and our software, both us as our team and our tech, to make sure that you are getting the data, because you probably have way more than you think you do. And it's about organizing it and centralizing and ultimately just putting it to work.
Mm-hmm.
That's super helpful and is kind of blowing my mind. I still in my head associate AI with like the smarter child chat box, and the fact that we can do all of these things is amazing to me. I've got a couple other questions. One about a functionality. So someone asked, can this also calculate survival rate? And if you are like me, you're on the call and you're not familiar with that term, here I asked for some clarification, and here's what I got. Survival rates are specific to kind of the fiscal year. So they're asking, can this look at kind of donor retention in a fiscal year? So they were saying this could be like a 3, 6, 9, or 12-month survival rate. So it pulls more, I guess, current numbers than a whole big data set where you could have the donor that's been giving to you for 10 years is going to affect your overall retention rate? Do you look at the survival rate, or to kind of drill down more into timeframes?
We do it in a couple of ways, Abby. So Pete's going to show you how fiscal
Yeah,
year works.
I'll just
We
jump
also
into
do-
the fiscal year really quickly. You
Oh,
set
cool.
your fiscal year end. That's going to inform all of the reports that we're working on within the system.
Well, a couple other things. A big one is like around second gift conversion and done in a contemporaneous time. So for those of you who are like students of the Sam Laprade School of Data Analytics, and she's like a foremost eminent thinker in data analytics and fundraising. She's also a partner of KITS and a consultant on our product. She's a big fan of second gift conversion and understanding how that works, the time periods of second gifts, the value of that can happen. So it does, Pete, if you want to just go to the list of KPIs, it would take us hours to go through every single one, right? Like if you go, we can.
There's a lot in here, and I can add more, but I would definitely say, looking at second gift conversion, this is specific to your first time donors. So what percentage of your first time donors make that second gift? This can certainly provide some insight into that survival rate that you're looking for, but really an interesting one. And if you have any more context on exactly what you'd love to report on, this is the stuff that we love to hear from fundraisers everywhere.
The next question I have is actually a little broader than the platform, and I'm very curious to hear your answer. So this person said, it seems that the monthly giving pie from the Canadian giving sector hasn't really increased at all over the last 5 years, but the average giving size has increased significantly. They said it seems there's kind of a shift with these monthly donors from one cause to another. Could you share a little bit about the net new audience and how effective this profiling is when you're trying to cast that wide net?
So Pete, if you don't mind, I'll grab this.
Sure.
I'm a partner at the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is a data project, a collaborative effort in partnership with the Giving Tuesday Project, where I get to pour over data and see these kinds of things. So we're seeing a couple of interesting trends, and I don't know if it exactly answers your question, but I'll definitely get into some of it. So the number of individual donors is actually decreasing, and it has for about 3 years in a row. So the number of people making donations has actually come down, which is super interesting. The number of donations have also come down in terms of gift numbers. The number of dollars is going up though. So what we're seeing, very much in line with what your comment was, or your question was an increase in the amount and a further reliance for organizations on major and large gifts. And this is actually, everyone in the sector loves big gifts, right? We love them. It's like easy, it's less work, there's more celebration, but actually this is a significant danger, because what we're seeing is, to your point, this next generation of donors, Gen X, Y, Z, right? So me, millennials, and then actually I'm right on the border of millennial and
Me
and Gen X, but Pete, and my kids, right? They're giving differently. Their donor loyalty is a lot less. And so things like likelihood to recur or become a recurring donor are actually a valuable mechanism for stewardship. This is not a this person is going to recur. I mean, it is. It's this person is likely to recur, so you need to go to work, because building donor loyalty is increasingly becoming complicated. Young people say they want to give, but don't have the ability, the financial resources necessarily, and they're being pulled in so many different directions. The rise of non-charitable or non-nonprofit giving through things like GoFundMe and non-registered organizations has led to decreases in the number of gifts to our sector, but not necessarily decreases in generosity. And so while I don't know this actually answers all of your question, you're seeing a number of compounding trends, and that's leading to the data pointing to what you said, less recurring donors and bigger gifts. But there's more behind the curtain that we need to think about, which means there's more that we can actually do as a sector or as fundraisers in our organizations to cultivate the relationships that are important and valuable, which is why Pete talked about focusing on those who are going to give you value, especially, and stewarding them to being recurring donors, to being second gift donors, to giving at the times of year your organization needs it. And that's where a piece of technology like this can actually ultimately add the most value.
Yeah, meeting your donors where they are.
That's one of the reasons I think this is so valuable. So we published a research study in 2020 that looked at how different generations wanted to engage with the nonprofits they support. And far and away, millennials and Generation Z donors specifically indicated that they were interested in supporting nonprofits with recurring donations. More than half of the Generation Z donors we surveyed indicated that their recurring support, or that their support was recurring instead of one-time gifts.
It's super interesting, Abby, because there's this, and we have a data point for this, by the way, which is really cool. A difference between a recurring donor who's on a subscription, like a Netflix subscription, and a repeat donor who feels like a recurring donor. And if you don't have nuance, isn't a recurring, and so Pete or whoever's doing the screen, we actually have, I don't know if you can show it or there's data in this test account, but we have a prediction for recurring donor, which is the subscription focused, and then there's a prediction for repeat donor on lapse, because they're worried, they act quite differently, and the risk of losing them is very different, right? A repeat donor you have to steward very differently from a recurring donor because there's more certainty, and that's really interesting, right? See there.
Yes, we've got a score for recurring lapse potential, as well as just lapse potential in general. And yeah, my generation, we're the subscription generation. I would be very hard pressed to think about giving a $1,000 gift personally, but $50 a month seems pretty reasonable for me to do for 2 years. No questions asked. And it's, at the end of the day, getting towards a pretty similar amount there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in the same boat. I'm also a millennial. I can't write you $1,000 check right now, but I can set up a recurring donation and support you monthly for years. So
I saw someone, I made a joke about a check. The truth is 84% of donations still come offline. They come through cash, checks, e-transfers, or ACH. So we're still seeing a sector that's making that transition. And as that transfer of wealth happens, as time ultimately passes, you're going to see a lot more Abbies and a lot less me's, right? I still send at the end of the year, or I'm an old school donor much more than somebody like Peter or Abby, and the time is not on my side. It's with these young up and comers, right?
So cool. I had no idea that we could do any of this with data, and I learned so much today. I'm so excited about it. All right.
We're pretty fired up, and the fact that we've made it so, there are a lot of tools like this that are like $50,000 or God knows what. No, these tools are really accessibly priced. We aim for at least a 10x return in your first year. We work to make it dialed. I mean, Pete didn't get into reporting, board reporting, PDF reporting, dashboarding, all the incredible suite of data tools. But it's exciting stuff, Abby, you're right.
Very cool. And everyone, we've got all the questions that you all have submitted. So what I will tell you is I will make sure that there's a link to the Fundraising KIT website. And if you have any questions, if you're looking for any additional information, you can get a hold of them there. You can check out more of their offerings and all of their integrations and everything. I'll make sure that you all get that link. So speaking of that link, keep an eye out on your email tomorrow morning. You should get an email from me around 11 a.m. Eastern. It will include a link to the slides and the recording and the Fundraising KIT's website and all kinds of other good stuff. So guys, thanks so much for spending time with me and for teaching us about, how technology can do all this really cool stuff. I know you blew my mind. I think you blew some other minds as well.
Super happy to be here, Abby. Thanks so much for the time and the platform. And we're so grateful for our partnership with QGive and excited to do more for all the folks that we all serve. So thanks, folks. Ciao.
All right. Bye, everybody.